Overnight, markets and policymakers are again being pulled between optimism about artificial intelligence and anxiety about conflict and higher long-run costs. The Financial Times reports Wall Street bulls are betting the U.S. share rally can keep running despite bubble fears, with AI-linked stocks central to the thesis. In parallel, the FT argues the era of cheap inputs is ending. Capital, labor and energy are unlikely to keep getting cheaper over the next half-century, a backdrop that would keep pressure on inflation, defense spending and industrial policy. On the technology front, the FT also highlights Operation Jailbreak lessons from Ukraine, where defense firms and soldiers are using AI to solve interoperability problems so weapons and systems can share data and coordinate faster. Global conflict remains the dominant risk. The BBC and Al Jazeera report Israel has expanded its ground offensive in southern Lebanon, including the seizure of a strategic fortress described by Israel's prime minister as a decisive shift against Hezbollah. In Washington, Al Jazeera reports a measure to deepen U.S.-Israel military cooperation is facing bipartisan pushback, with lawmakers seeking to strip pro-Israel provisions from a defense bill, underscoring political sensitivity around the scale and structure of support. In Asia, the BBC reports Japan's defense minister has denied militarism, while criticizing China's huge arsenal, signaling sharper rhetoric as regional military build-ups continue. In Myanmar, multiple outlets including the BBC and ABC report a huge blast in a rebel-held village has killed dozens. Authorities say it was likely caused by mining explosives stored in a warehouse, with reports of at least 46 dead and many wounded near the Chinese border. In the Americas, the BBC and Al Jazeera report Colombians are voting in a pivotal presidential election that could reshape relations with the United States after months of public recrimination between leaders. Turning to Australia, the technological revolution is landing in consumer-facing industries. The Guardian reports on generative AI models being used in fashion e-commerce, with the iconic saying AI-generated imagery should be clearly labeled and products accurately represented. The story highlights the tension between efficiency gains for smaller brands and the need for transparency to maintain consumer trust. On national security, ABC reports experts warning Australia could be a perfect target for a fledgling Islamist terror network linked to anti-Semitic attacks in Europe, the UK and Canada. The warning will sharpen focus on intelligence coordination, community safety and protective security settings across government. On the Australian economy and household finances, ABC reports Virgin Australia customers have 1 month to use remaining COVID-era travel credits, with more than $90 million in unspent credits earlier this year. That is a material deadline for consumers and a balance sheet cleanup issue for the airline. In Australian government policy and politics, The Guardian's podcast reports former Prime Minister Tony Abbott has taken a new role as Liberal president, prompting questions about the party's strategic direction and the shape of Conservative politics ahead. Finally, on public institutions and accountability, ABC reports allegations of serious police misconduct in a case where a man suffered multiple fractured ribs and a punctured lung, and officers then discussed how to explain the injuries before charging him with assault. Expect renewed scrutiny of oversight, use of force reporting and integrity systems. No major new moves were reported in the Australian share market coverage provided, but global AI-led risk appetite and elevated geopolitical risk remain the key drivers to watch today.